On for the lady!
Louen Leoncoeur, the so-called King Arthur of this world, but a poor copy. Or perhaps he is King Richard. One finds it difficult to tell sometimes with these cheap imitations. Suffice to say that he does not live up to expectations, for the peasants of his lands live little better than slaves. A fact of life in his backwater of a nation that only survives since a certain goddess decided to use them for her own ends. So for all his arrogance, that is all that he is. A tool, leading a pack of useful idiots for an elven goddess. Let's take a look at this great kingdom, surrounded by foes, teeming vampires, greenskins, beastmen, and even ratmen that threaten to wipe them out at every step. The Empire may have it rough, but we at least have the sense to use more than just unwashed peasants as our infantry. But good sense has always escaped certain people.
Welcome everyone, Christine here with my campaign overview guide for Louen Leoncoeur, the King of Bretonnia, and probably the worst Bretonnian campaign currently in the game. By far, actually. The only benefits you get in this campaign are 10% campaign movement range and leadership RSIs of 50% for lords when attacking. Louen himself, in terms of his skill line, well, he gets 4 chivalry per turn. He starts with all knightly vows, unlocked from the very start. He gets the Blessing of the Lady ability, passive, so physical resistance, and he gets a leadership and melee attack benefit when fighting the forces of evil, or rather when fighting warriors of chaos, demons, undead, and greenskins. On top of that, his special skill line can help him out. He does get 10 diplomatic relations with all factions, a benefit to upkeep of questing knights and knights of the realm, which is certainly very useful. A construction time for barracks buildings and local recruitment capacity, yes. Construction costs for barracks buildings, hero capacity for paladins, hero recruit rank for paladins, as well as a bunch of really powerful abilities like the Lady's Champion, the Beloved Son of Bretonnia, and the Lion's Shield. So all of that is all well and good. The problem is that Louen's start position is pretty bad in more ways than one. So he starts at war with Mousillon. Mousillon is way over here, and they have a heavily fortified settlement in this particular location, which makes it very, very difficult to actually take down because they have this very substantial garrison. And they do start with control of the port of Laguill over here. You also start with a really worthless building in the barracks, the training field, which you want to get rid of instantly. Start building a field right away so you can get archers, or delay this for one turn, delay destroying it, just get some men-at-arms for the first turn of the campaign, defeat this army, go over here. But here's the problem. You've got all of these provinces in Bretonnia that have provincial capitals that you need to besiege if you're gonna take. You could confederate these Bretonnian factions, but the problem with that is it takes time to research it. And the factions you start with researching, well, they're not necessarily going to be the ones that survive for a very long time. Well, Lyonesse could survive, but the others, not necessarily so. Like Paravon can die very quickly, Artois can die very quickly, all that kind of stuff. So that can be a pretty substantial issue when it comes to researching that, and a waste of research time, which could be better spent getting water pumps to increase the number of peasants that each of your region gives, or how much your peasant economy is going to provide. So you've got Mousillon. The issue is, if you just rush for Mousillon, that is actually a pretty bad idea, because you also start a war with the Skull Smashers over here in the mountains. And what you really want to do in this particular campaign, you want to take Grung Zint over here as quickly as possible. How quickly? That's a discussion. You could just on the very first turn move your army over here, and then on turn 2 just go for Grung Zint, or on turn 1 you can move over here to Laguill, take it over, win against these vampire towns, take it over, and then start making your way over here while recruiting peasant archers along the way. Yes, there will be a greenskin army at this stage over here, but it's not necessarily going to be a very substantial not necessarily going to be a very substantial army that you're going to deal with. And if you can bring a bunch of peasant archers, that certainly will make your life easier. You do start with a pretty good starting army with 2 Knights of the Realm, 2 Knights Errant, and 1 Pegasus Knight. Though Grungzent, if we look at it, it does have defenses, so it's going to be an unwalled settlement battle. It's going to nullify a lot of the strengths of your cavalry, though greenskin settlements can be pretty open with their terrain, but certainly you will face some drawbacks in that particular battle. So you can either rush it, or you can go for Languil, take out this army over here, get some experience, get some levels, and then face the greenskins there. And after that, well, probably one of the best things you could do in this campaign would be to take Artois. You could go for Marienburg, but going for Marienburg very quickly during the course of the campaign is actually not recommended, because then you have to hold it, you have to deal with the Marienburg AI. So one of the things you could do in this campaign is actually declare war on Artois, because they're not really going to have an army. They're going to be weakened from fighting Kemmler. Now, you will have the issue of the Red Duke, and of course you will have the issue of Kemmler. Now, Lyonesse is going to do something against Mousillon, and depending on the difficulty you're playing this campaign, you can either get a lot of time to deal with the Red Duke or very little time before he takes out Lyonesse. Though Lyonesse is a provincial capital, so it will have its own very substantial garrison, though it's not as substantial as the garrison in Mousillon. So rushing for Mousillon, not necessarily a recommended idea. It might actually be better to deal with Kemmler and then sell Blackstone Post and Grungzint to the dwarves of Carrick-Ziffin, and then take Baston, and then hit Mousillon with a lot of troops. But regardless of how you decide to do it, either a direct confrontation with Mousillon, because you could possibly besiege them, like just build a full-on stack of troops, besiege them, get some knights, because you can get the tier 2 settlement pretty quickly, so that can give you access to the Knights Errant. That can also give you access to Trebuchet, so this might be a slow campaign start, but you do have at least the ability of getting siege and pretty decent cavalry from very early on in this campaign. The problem is, while you may deal with Mousillon and Kemmler, because you do have a pretty powerful army against a lot of the units they recruit, it's very easy for them to recover from any losses, especially in areas with high vampiric corruption. But once you deal with Mousillon, the issue that's going to come up in this campaign is to the north you have Bellicor and Norska. And what tends to happen in anyone that shares a border with Bellicor is he declares war on them. This is something that happens for Ali Fanard. This is something that happens for the factions, the High Elven factions in Ulfwan. And this is certainly something that's going to happen to you, because you're the one that's actually closest to him. And so what Bellicor will do is he'll declare war on you and invade your territory with a full stack, as well as a full stack from his vassal, especially if you're playing on Legendary. So you're constantly going to be harassed, and especially here at the port of Languil. Now, you can recruit more armies as Bretonnia for no supply line cost, because Bretonnia, of the benefits they do have in their campaign, they don't have an issue with supply lines. So one of the things you can do very early on is, for instance, get the second army and not have to worry about the issue of supply lines, because you don't have them. You do have the peasant economy limit. So that can be a major benefit in a Bretonian campaign. But even with dealing with the raids from Bellicor, you do still have other issues. You do have Grom the Punch here in the south. You do have Orion, who's going to take the forest of Shalon. Maybe you want to leave him to it, because you don't want to end up in a war with him. Make a deal with Carcassonne, and just avoid this area to the south, because you're going to have Ikeclaw and Mogar to deal with in this particular area. The problem in this campaign, however, is where to expand. Expanding to south means you're just defending a vast swath of territory from constant attacks in the north from the Norskans and Bellicor, while if you go south, you're going to deal with Mogar and Ikeclaw. You know, the Fey Enchantress, she can expand north, but she doesn't necessarily have to, and she doesn't have to deal with Kemmler and Mousillon, and certainly not Bellicor. She can focus on Ikeclaw and Mogar, and she can do pretty well when it comes to that. Whereas as Louen, you kind of want to expand in the same way, or you want to go for the Empire. The problem with the Empire is that a lot of the territory the Empire has, like Midland, is also going to be exposed from other enemies, and you need to deal with them in some way, shape, or form. Dealing with Marienburg in its entirety as a faction may also leave this particular province very exposed to the Norskins to the north, who don't particularly like you as a faction. So there lie some of the issues of this particular campaign. It's difficult to expand when it comes down to it, because yeah, you can take the Bretonnia provinces, but what next? Well, what next is you could either go south, but that means dealing with Ickleclaw, or you could go into the Empire, or you could do a combination of those two. Another issue in this particular campaign is with the vows. So the problem with the vows is that they require you to do certain objectives, right? The issue is, if you're not in the desert or the jungle, it can be difficult to achieve success, at least with the second vow. So there lies one of the problems with increasing, with doing the vows. In fact, this is the kind of campaign where I would actually recommend playing a campaign as either Raponce or as Bordelot over here, saving a lot of lords and heroes that have those vows unlocked, because they're going to have it a lot easier, and then maybe playing this campaign. But I do think it's the most difficult Bretonnian campaign. I think the starting position is awkward. I think the mid-game options for this campaign and long-term prospects are limited. I mean, the best thing you could do in the long term would be indeed to move down south and conquer Araby, but in that case, why not play Raponce? Why not play the Fey Enchantress? Because they'll have a much better situation than that, and actually some very good campaign benefits. The only one that you have that's worth it is that 10% campaign movement range. I mean, Louen is certainly worth getting as a Legendary Lord through Confederation, because he's really powerful, but actually playing his campaign, it's really not the greatest campaign in the world at the moment. Anyway, that's all there is to say. Questin here, signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications, and I'll see you boys and girls next time.